Hi there, welcome to Reddit Confessions. Let me take you into a story that didn't begin with yelling, cheating, or some explosive reveal. No, it began with a grocery list. A handwritten one. Milk, eggs, almond butter, and if you have time, the balsamic from the store I like, not the cheap one. She signed it with a heart, but no name. No love, Jess. Just the heart. I stared at that list longer than I care to admit. Because it hit me. That was the most affection I'd gotten from my wife in 3 weeks. Let me ask you something. Ever been in a marriage where the silence is so loud it drowns out your own thoughts? That's where I lived. Not just visited, lived. Jessica and I hadn't fought. That's what made it worse. No yelling. No betrayal. Just slow, invisible erosion. A glacier of nothing. She started wearing earbuds around the house. Said she was into focus playlists. I'd come home, say hi, no reply. Sometimes she'd take them out and go, "Oh, did you say something?" "Yeah, just your husband." "No big deal." Touch. Forget it. I'd reach for her hand during a movie. She'd scratch her arm like she had a sudden itch. I kissed her cheek one night while she washed dishes. She leaned away and said, "Ugh. Not now, Gordon." That was 6 months ago. That was also the last time I tried. I'm not saying I was perfect. I'm not saying I was exciting or ripped or even remotely mysterious. But I was there. Every day, doing laundry, cooking, asking about her day even when she never asked about mine. I once planned a date night, printed menus, candles, that dumb Italian playlist she used to love. She looked at it like it was a prank. Said, "This feels forced." You know what else feels forced? Pretending you're not hurt when the woman you married recoils from your touch like you're made of fire. But I didn't leave. I stayed. I journaled. I went numb. Until a coworker, Ellie, joked one day, "You look like someone who hasn't been hugged in a decade." I laughed, and then I didn't. Because it wasn't a joke. 3 weeks later, I booked a trip to the coast. Just to breathe. Ellie came too. It was supposed to be a solo thing, but I panicked last minute and invited her, told myself it was for safety, that I'd regret going alone. That was a lie. I just wanted someone to notice I was alive. We had separate rooms. We ate fish tacos by the pier. She laughed when I said I missed blockbuster nights. No lines were crossed. Not at first. But something changed when I sent Jessica a photo of the view, waves, a drink, and Ellie's reflection barely visible in the glass behind me. For the first time in forever. Jessica replied within 10 seconds. "Who is she?" And just like that, she suddenly remembered I existed. The moment I saw the notification pop up on my phone, I actually laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, more like one of those bitter laughs you let out when something wildly ironic happens. After 6 months of being invisible, rejected, and dismissed like a piece of outdated furniture in the corner of our home, Jessica had finally shown emotion. All it took was the blurry reflection of another woman behind my glass of sangria. Her message was short. Who is she? No emoji. No question about the trip. No hope you're having fun. Just that, and the digital echo of suspicion, jealousy, or maybe fear. I couldn't tell which. And for a second, I didn't even want to respond. I just let it sit there, unread, watching the typing dots appear and disappear as she wrestled with whether to send another message or not. Ellie was sitting across from me at the small patio table, biting into grilled shrimp and laughing about how we both hated the texture of hotel towels. She noticed my expression change and raised an eyebrow. Something wrong. I shook my head. Not really. Just my wife messaged. Ellie's smile faded a little, replaced by that quiet look people give when they know something about your life isn't quite right, but don't want to push. "Ah," she said simply, then took another bite. She didn't pry, and that made me like her even more. Later that night, I finally replied. "Her name's Ellie. She's a friend. Don't worry. I know you're not interested in what I do anymore." Cold. Maybe. But after everything, it felt deserved. And I'm not proud to admit this, but I stared at my phone for the next hour like a teenager waiting for a crush to text back. Except it wasn't love I was waiting on, it was validation. I wanted to see if she still cared, even if only out of jealousy. She didn't respond that night. But the next morning? 6 missed calls. 2 voicemails. 1 long text that started with, "I think we need to talk." Now that might sound promising to some. To me, it was infuriating. Because for months I'd been trying to talk. And I don't just mean about the physical stuff. I mean about everything. About how I felt invisible. About how I didn't even feel like a roommate anymore. about how even the grocery lists had stopped having hearts on them. And now, because of one sunset selfie and a woman with kind eyes who made me feel like a human again, Jessica suddenly wanted to fix things? I didn't reply. Instead, I went kayaking with Ellie. We capsized twice and laughed so hard my stomach hurt. I hadn't felt that free in years. For once, I didn't have to second-guess my every move or feel like I was chasing a ghost in my own marriage. Ellie and I talked about everything: favorite cartoons, bad first dates, childhood fears. She told me about her dad who walked out when she was 12 and how it made her obsessed with understanding people's silences. "You don't talk much about your wife," she said softly as we dried off on the dock. "There's not much to say anymore," I replied, and for the first time, I believed it. That night, as I stood under the outdoor shower rinsing sand off my legs, another message came in from Jessica. This one was different. "Gordon, I need to see you. Please. I think I made a huge mistake." There it was. Not love. Not regret. Just panic. But was it too late? Because something unexpected had started to happen on that trip. I didn't just begin to fall out of love with Jessica. I started to remember what it felt like to love myself again. And read it. What came next would be the final undoing of everything I thought I knew about my marriage. By the time I landed back home, I already knew things wouldn't feel the same. You'd think that returning from a vacation would be comforting, slipping back into your own bed, your own clothes, your familiar routines. But as I dragged my suitcase up the steps to our front door, I felt like a stranger arriving at someone else's house. The doormat still said, "Welcome home," but the words looked hollow. Jessica wasn't waiting at the door. No hug, no smile, not even a peek through the window. The woman who had ignored my existence for months suddenly wanted to talk, begged for a conversation, and now, nothing. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and was greeted by silence. No music, no smell of cooking, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and a house that looked exactly like I'd left it, untouched by any emotion, like it had been paused. She emerged from the hallway a few seconds later. No makeup, oversized sweatshirt, eyes puffy. The kind of look that screams, "I've been crying, but don't want you to mention it." We stood there, facing each other, and neither of us said a word. I broke the silence. "You said you needed to talk." She nodded slowly. Her voice, when it finally came, was softer than I remembered. "I didn't think you'd actually go." I blinked. "You mean the trip?" She looked away. "Yeah, I thought you were bluffing. That you'd book it to prove a point, but stay home like always." That hit harder than I expected. Like she had spent the last year not just ignoring me, but predicting my weakness. Assuming I wouldn't dare pull away, wouldn't risk confrontation, wouldn't make a move without her permission. "And when you realized I was really gone?" I asked. Her lips trembled. I panicked. "You're my husband. You're not allowed to just disappear like that." I actually laughed. Not out of amusement, more like disbelief. "Not allowed. Jess, you vanished a long time ago. You just never left the house." She stepped closer, arms folded tight, like she was holding herself together. "Who is she?" I didn't answer. "Gordon." Her voice sharpened. "I saw the pictures. I saw her in the background. She came with you, didn't she?" There it was, the real reason behind the emotional resurrection. Not regret, not reflection, just territorial panic. "Yes," I finally said. "Her name's Ellie. She's a coworker. She made me feel seen. Something I haven't felt in a long time." She inhaled sharply like I just slapped her. "And you slept with her?" "No," I said immediately, then paused. But I thought about it, and that was the most honest thing I'd said in months. Jessica turned away and sank into the armrest of the couch, her shoulders shaking slightly. I couldn't tell if it was crying or just exhaustion. Maybe both. "I didn't think I had to try anymore," she whispered. "I thought we were solid, that you'd always be here." "That's not how love works," I replied quietly. "You don't get to lock it in and coast. You have to choose it. Every day." The silence between us now felt louder than all the ones before. She wiped her face with her sleeve and looked at me again. "Do you still love me?" I didn't know what to say. For the first time in 11 years, I realized I wasn't sure. The love I remembered felt buried under layers of resentment, rejection, and silence. Could I dig it back up? Or was it already rotting? "I don't know," I told her. "But I know I don't love this. Whatever this has become." That night, I slept on the guest bed, not because she asked me to, but because the distance felt necessary. And lying there, staring at the ceiling, I felt something new creeping into my chest. Not hope, not anger, clarity. Jessica was scared to lose me, but she was never scared enough to choose me while I was still hers. And now, I had to decide what came next, stay in the ruins or walk toward something real. What happened over the next few days would give me the answer, but it would come at a price. I wasn't prepared for the way Jessica started acting the next morning. She was nice, not the cold, distant kind of polite she'd been practicing for the past year. This was different, frighteningly different, like someone had flipped a switch and rewired her overnight. She'd gotten up before me, made coffee, my exact brand, even added the cinnamon I liked, but had stopped using because she once said it made the house smell too sweet. The kitchen smelled perfect that morning. She greeted me with a soft, "Hey," like everything was normal. She even smiled. Not the tight-lipped smile of obligation I'd gotten used to, but a small, cautious curve that actually reached her eyes. And that's what made it terrifying, because it didn't feel real. "Coffee?" she asked, already pouring a second mug. I nodded slowly and took it, unsure whether to thank her or question her. My hand wrapped around the mug, warm and confusing. I waited for the usual awkward pause, the glance at the phone, the quick excuse to walk out of the room. But none of that happened. Instead, she pulled out a chair at the kitchen table and sat down, like we were about to have breakfast together on a Sunday morning in a marriage that wasn't falling apart. "I thought maybe we could talk," she said, cautiously, as if she were speaking to a wounded animal. "Talk," I echoed. "Now we talk." She looked down. "I know I've been distant. I know I haven't made you feel wanted. And I get that now. I really do." That last part hit hard, because for months, I had begged for her to just see what I was feeling, and now that she finally did, I didn't know if I had the capacity left to care. "What changed?" I asked, voice low. She didn't answer right away. Her fingers played with the rim of the mug before she whispered, "The photo. Seeing her. Seeing you with her. It made me realize how close I am to losing you." There it was again, the truth slipping through her panic. Not "I miss you." Not "I love you." But "I'm afraid to lose what I thought would always be there." She reached across the table and put her hand on mine. It had been so long since she'd touched me voluntarily, I nearly flinched from the shock of it. I didn't pull away, but I didn't return the gesture either. "I don't want us to be strangers," she said. I stared at our hands. "You made me one." Her hand slowly slid back. That day, she kept trying, asking if I wanted to walk together after dinner, suggesting we rewatch some old show we used to love, even texting me while I was at work. "Hope your day's going okay," speech balloon. She hadn't sent me a heart or emoji in over a year, and now she was pouring them into every message like she'd just discovered emotion again. You'd think I'd be happy, or relieved, but honestly, I felt nothing but suspicion, because kindness after abandonment doesn't feel like love. It feels like manipulation, like trying to resuscitate a body after you've already buried it. That night, while brushing my teeth, I stared at myself in the mirror and asked the question I'd been avoiding for weeks. What if she only wants me back now because someone else saw value in me? Ellie never pressured. She never flirted, never crossed boundaries. And yet, she made me feel more wanted in 4 days than Jessica had in 4 years. And that terrified me. Because if someone like Ellie could feel that easy, that natural, then maybe everything Jessica and I had built wasn't special. Maybe it was just long. Long doesn't mean strong. And routine doesn't mean love. I got into bed that night, still the guest bed, by choice, and checked my phone. A message from Ellie sat there, unread for hours. "I know you're probably dealing with a lot. Just wanted to say I'm thinking of you." That one message made me feel more human than an entire day of forced affection at home. I didn't reply, not because I didn't want to, but because I suddenly realized I was standing at the edge of a decision that would change my life completely. Jessica had finally come alive, but was it too late to matter? The invitation came in the form of a sticky note on the fridge. "Dinner. Just us. No distractions. 7 p.m. There was even a smiley face. I stood there staring at that yellow square for a long minute, coffee in hand, unsure whether I should feel touched or manipulated. Because everything Jessica had been doing over the last few days felt like it had been run through a PR agency. Like she was on an apology tour with carefully curated moments of affection, warmth, and regret. And I didn't know if any of it was real. Still, I showed up. At 7:01 p.m., I walked into the dining room, expecting takeout in boxes or something thrown together last minute. Instead, the table was set, candles lit, soft music playing, and homemade lasagna. Actual homemade lasagna. She hadn't cooked like this since our 5th anniversary, and even then, she nearly burned down the kitchen. Jessica looked up from pouring wine, her expression hopeful but cautious. "You came," she said. I wanted to say something sarcastic, like, wasn't sure if I needed a reservation, but I didn't. I just nodded and pulled out the chair. The whole scene felt surreal, like someone had replaced my wife with an upgraded version who cared about ambience and eye contact. We ate mostly in silence at first. The clinking of cutlery was the only soundtrack to our tension. Then she started asking questions. Not about Ellie, which surprised me, but about me. "How's work been? What have you been thinking about lately? Did you ever finish that woodworking project in the garage?" At first, I thought it was just small talk, but then I realized she was trying, really trying, but it wasn't natural. It was like watching someone attempt CPR with a YouTube tutorial open. Halfway through dessert, a slightly burned creme brulee, she finally asked the question I'd been bracing for. "Do you think you're falling for her?" I didn't look up. I kept my eyes on the melting sugar crust in front of me. "I think I'm falling for how she makes me feel." Jessica exhaled sharply, like I'd knocked the wind out of her. "I deserve that," she said. "I know I've failed you. I pushed you away. I made you feel small." I looked at her then, really looked. Her mascara was slightly smudged. Her lip was trembling. And for a moment, just a fleeting moment, I saw the girl I had fallen in love with 11 years ago. The one who used to get excited about cheap motel getaways and made up songs about our cat. The one who once held my hand during a root canal and whispered jokes to distract me from the drilling. But that girl had been gone a long time, and I wasn't sure if she was truly back or just afraid of losing the man who used to worship her. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Jess," I said quietly. Her voice cracked. "Then don't say it like that. Don't say it like a slow goodbye. If you're done, say it." That was the problem. I wasn't done. Not fully. But I wasn't invested either. I was standing in a limbo where neither decision felt good. Stay, and I'd be haunted by resentment. Leave, and I'd be haunted by guilt. "You want the truth?" I said. "I feel safer talking to someone who's known me for 6 months than I do sitting across from you right now. That terrifies me." She didn't speak. Her eyes welled up, but she nodded slowly, as if she already knew. And maybe she did. Maybe she'd known for years that she'd broken something and assumed I was too passive to notice. Then, she said the one thing I never expected. "Would you meet me tomorrow night, like a first date?" I blinked. What? No talk about the past. No mention of what went wrong. Just 2 people trying to see if there's anything left worth fighting for. I didn't answer right away. Honestly, I was stunned by the suggestion. Was it romantic? Desperate? Pathetic? Brave? Maybe all of it at once. I left the table without agreeing. And yet, the idea haunted me. Because somewhere deep inside, buried under all the bruises, a small voice whispered, "What if this is the final test before everything changes?" She told me to meet her at the old train station downtown. The same one where we'd first met over a decade ago. Back when we were 2 broke 20-somethings splitting cheap coffee and pretending we weren't scared of the future. That place still smelled like wet concrete and rusted metal. They'd renovated the benches, but left the ghosts intact. I showed up 5 minutes early. I'm not sure why. Maybe part of me wanted to see if she'd flake. Or maybe I just needed a minute to gather myself. My palms were sweating. It felt exactly like a real first date, except this time, I already knew how it could end, in disaster. And then she appeared. Jessica wore a dress I hadn't seen in years. Not fancy, just familiar. Soft blue cotton with a little embroidered neckline. She used to wear it when we'd go to those tiny street festivals, walking hand in hand while arguing over kettle corn versus funnel cake. I used to love that version of her, playful, easy, full of spontaneous laughter. Tonight, she was quieter. No makeup, hair down, wavy, nervous. "Hey," she said, walking up slowly. "You came." I did. We stood there awkwardly, the way people do when they want to say 100 things and have no idea where to begin. She motioned to the bench, and we sat, 2 people with years of shared silence between them, trying to pretend they'd never broken each other's hearts. For the first few minutes, we didn't talk about anything important. She mentioned how the train schedule hadn't changed. I joked that I was surprised the benches weren't still splintering. She laughed, a real laugh, and it threw me off more than I expected. That sound had been missing from our house for too long. Then she pulled something from her purse, a folded-up napkin. "Do you remember this?" she asked. I didn't at first, but then she turned it over, and I saw it. A tiny, smeared doodle of a cat in sunglasses, drawn in blue pen. My doodle. I had drawn it the day we met, joking that her tortoiseshell glasses made her look like a cartoon villain's stylish cat. She'd kept it. After all these years. I didn't even know she had it. "I found it while cleaning," she said, her voice soft. "And I remembered how hard you made me laugh that day. You were so weird. I loved it." I swallowed hard. What happened to us? Her smile faded. I forgot how to show up. Somewhere along the way, I started thinking love was permanent, like furniture. Something you can just live around and assume will always be there. I stopped checking in. I stopped listening. And then I started treating your patience like indifference. She looked up at me, eyes glistening. "And then I punished you for not reading my mind." Her honesty stunned me. Not because it was perfect, but because it was finally true. For so long, I'd begged her to talk, to explain, to say something that made sense. And now here it was, the admission I'd needed, too late but real. "I don't know if I can undo what I did," she continued. "But I want to try. Not because I'm scared of losing you to someone else, but because I'm scared I've already lost the part of myself that loved you the way you deserve." We sat in silence again, a deeper one, not tense, just heavy. And then I said the thing I didn't expect to come out of my mouth. "I haven't kissed you in 9 months." She closed her eyes. "I know. I forgot what it felt like," I admitted. "And that scares me, because I used to love kissing you more than breathing." She opened her eyes again, leaned in just slightly, and whispered, "Would you remember if you tried?" I didn't move right away. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But something in me still hesitated. Because this wasn't about a kiss. It was about a reset button that didn't exist. About whether love could come back after living through drought. Still, I leaned in. And when our lips met, it wasn't electric. It wasn't fire. It wasn't magic. It was quiet. But there was something alive in it. Something buried. Something that said, "I'm still here, barely, but I haven't given up yet." When we finally pulled apart, she looked down. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," I said. "But I wanted to know if it was still real." "And?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. But it didn't feel wrong. That night, I didn't go back to the guest bed. I didn't go back to hers either. I took a long walk by myself, under the quiet glow of streetlights, thinking about napkins, train stations, and the terrifying possibility that sometimes loving someone again might be harder than falling in love the first time. The morning after our first date, I sat on the front porch with a mug of black coffee and more confusion than clarity. The air was cool, the sky still hazy with early sunlight, and for a brief second, I imagined what it would be like if life could just stay in that moment. No choices, no questions, no consequences. Just breath, and warmth, and stillness. But peace doesn't last long in a marriage that's been limping for years. Jessica came outside, barefoot, in one of my old hoodies she hadn't worn in forever. She didn't say much, just gave me a small, tentative nod, then sat beside me. The silence between us had changed. It wasn't angry or awkward, it was fragile. Like we were both afraid to speak first and break whatever small, invisible truce we'd managed to build. We didn't talk about the kiss. We didn't talk about the station. It felt like we were circling something that neither of us was ready to name. And then my phone rang. "Ellie." I froze. Jessica glanced at the screen and turned away, pretending not to notice, but I saw her shoulders tense. I let it ring until it stopped, setting the phone face down on the armrest like it was radioactive. She didn't say anything. Not then. Not even later when she left for the grocery store. But I felt it, the shift. The recognition that for all the effort she'd just made, Ellie's shadow still lingered over everything. I told myself I wouldn't call Ellie back. But I did. That evening, I sat in my car outside the hardware store, engine off, phone to my ear, heart in my throat. "Hey," she said. "You okay?" I paused. "Yeah. No. I don't know." She didn't pressure me. She never did. That was part of what made her so dangerous. She didn't need to chase affection. It just found her. "I didn't want to call," she said gently, "but I was worried. I saw your name disappear from my stories. Figured something changed." I looked out the window at an old man pushing a shopping cart through the parking lot. wondering how many years it had taken him to stop caring about anything. Jessica's trying, I finally said. I figured. It's confusing. I know. More silence. And then she said, "Can I ask something, Gordon? You don't have to answer." Sure. If she hadn't tried, would you have stayed gone? That question landed like a brick in my chest. Because the truth I hadn't dared to admit to even myself, was yes. If Jessica hadn't messaged me that night, if she hadn't suddenly remembered I existed, I would have stayed gone. I would have kept walking towards something that felt alive. Something that didn't require me to beg for scraps of attention. But instead of saying that, I said, "I don't know." She sighed. "That's fair." We said goodbye shortly after. No drama. No begging. Just two people quietly recognizing that their connection had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. When I got home, Jessica was in the kitchen unloading groceries. She didn't look at me when I walked in. "Ellie?" she asked, without turning around. "Yes." She nodded once. "Thank you for not lying." That night, the air between us thickened again. Not with anger, with fear. The fear that we were pretending to climb out of a hole that was actually just getting deeper. And yet, neither of us pulled away. But the truth was bubbling underneath it all. You can kiss someone you've loved for years. You can cry in front of them. You can even want to fix what's broken. But none of that guarantees the pieces will fit the same way again. That night, Jessica reached for my hand under the covers. And I let her. But I stared at the ceiling, wondering if it was a hand I was still meant to hold, or just one I was too afraid to let go of. The next morning, I woke up before Jessica. Her hand was still resting on mine beneath the covers, light and unassuming, like she wasn't holding on out of fear anymore, but out of something softer, something quieter. I watched her sleep for a moment, noticing the small lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. I realized I hadn't truly looked at her in a long time. I had seen her, in the hallway, at the kitchen counter, passing in silence, but I hadn't looked. Not like this. When she opened her eyes and saw me watching her, she smiled. Not that old performative smile, but a tired, real one. The kind that says, "I know it's not perfect, but I'm still here." We made coffee together, standing side by side in the kitchen like it was muscle memory. She handed me my mug before I asked. I poured her almond milk without being told. It felt like we were speaking a language we hadn't used in years, but never truly forgot. Over breakfast, she said something that stayed with me all day. "I'm not trying to go back to who I was. I just want to be someone better with you." And for the first time in a long, long while, I believed her. That week, we did something we hadn't done since our early years. We made a schedule. Not for chores, or work, or logistics. A schedule for each other. 20 minutes of undistracted talking every night. A date night once a week, even if it was just ice cream and a walk. A rule that said we ask instead of assume. A rule that said we listen instead of react. It wasn't magical. We didn't suddenly fall into each other's arms and reignite the passion of our 20s. But slowly, gently, we started choosing each other again, not out of habit, but out of hope. As for Ellie, I sent her one last message. "Thank you for reminding me what it feels like to be seen. You helped me remember my worth, and I'll never forget that. But I need to try and heal what I once believed was unbreakable." She replied with kindness. That's who she was. That's who she'll always be. It's been 3 months now. Jessica and I still have off days. Sometimes we fall back into silence. Sometimes we argue over small things that don't matter. But the difference now is that we return to each other. The gap is smaller. The pauses are shorter. The love is quieter, but somehow deeper. I don't know if we'll be perfect again, but I know we're finally being honest. And that, more than anything, has brought us back to life. Thank you for watching this story unfold here on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever gone through something like this, losing someone while still living in the same house, or found a way back after disconnecting for years, we'd love to hear your story. What was your turning point? What helped you hold on? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you in any way, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us again for more raw, human confessions, only on Reddit Confessions. Until next time.